And I believe we're live. I think we're good. So we can get going. I'll put in the intro music and outro music later because I still have not advanced to that quite yet. But thanks guys for being with me. Another episode of the Union of the Unwanted. Let me remind people who might be new to the show that we do the show every other Monday, live streamed, and then you can find the audio soon after on all the audio platforms. So definitely check that out. You can go to the unionoftheunwanted.com to find all the links. At the moment, for the time being, we're going to try to keep live streaming on our YouTube channel, but then we're uploading to our Rumble channel. I'm sure eventually we'll be live streaming on our Rumble channel and the YouTube channel won't exist anymore. But for now, that's what we're doing. And then also, if you subscribe to us on whatever audio platform you use for your podcasts, every other month or the Mondays we don't do a show, we're releasing episodes that are flashbacks. We've done tons of great episodes in the back. In the past, like near death experiences episodes. We've done shows with G. Edward Griffin, Jim Florentine, Del Bigtree, Judy Mikovich. So tons of just amazing
Roseanne Barr.
Roseanne
Remember when
Barr.
Roseanne came on and called somebody gay,
We
accused him
did,
of being gay? That was hilarious.
yeah.
Oh
I,
no, that was Mike Binder, and
Mike
she
Binder.
also said that that Mike should, and I'm quoting here. I'm quoting here, and I know it's early in the show, but you can go back and check it and tell me if I'm wrong. Roseanne said, "quote Mike Binder, you can suck my fat Jew cock." That's what she said. That's what Roseanne Barr said.
That's a
She did.
direct.
We were all here for it. She said in front of God and everyone else.
And then she apologized and she goes, "Oh, I guess I was wrong about that." He's like, "What did I
Because
do?" He's like,
Mike
took all this
had
friendly
not
fire.
given her enough of stroking for her last special. That's what it came down to. It wasn't anything that they were arguing about for the first 35 minutes of their back and forth. It came down to Mike wasn't nice enough to me the last time I released a special, which is the most comic thing I've ever heard in my entire life. God bless Roseanne.
Yeah, what happened was she didn't know he was on the call. So somebody brought it up and she went on a giant rant about how he's such a a-hole and this and that, whatever. And then we're like, "Hey, Roseanne, he's on the call." And then he's like, "Yeah, that's not what that's not I never said that about your special. All I was saying is that I felt like you could have worked a little harder, like it wasn't up to you." And then she goes, "Yeah, you're kind of right." And that was the end of it. But she went on like a giant
It
rant.
was beautiful.
Why nobody has clipped that yet and used it to go viral, I don't know. But
I,
it was a great clip.
I
But
don't think you sent out the audio and the video for that. No, I'm
oh, I probably didn't, but it is out there. It's out there. People are feel free to this
oh,
stuff's
it's
so
magical.
audio, just clip it and share it anywhere you want. If you feel like that's an important clip that the world needs to rewatch, then please share that important clip. But
We put out the clip about the lesbian witches in LA. And that's a thing that exists on Twitter. Roseanne talking about the lesbian witches from that Union of the Unwanted episode.
yeah, no, well, that was a great clip. She's it's funny because I could tell the people on the call who grew up watching her and listening to her, I couldn't stop laughing because I'm like, I can't believe the same voice that I grew up listening to on TV because it's such a distinct voice and she's so sarcastic and over the top that it just I can't take anything she says seriously. It's just so funny. But I guess you had to grow up in that era. But
You,
it's
you know, in 2018, when she got canceled and she was like foreshadowing, and I remember going on a hike in Runyon Canyon with a now woke addict, and he's like, "You're a fan of Roseanne Barr?" And I said, "I'm a fan of free speech." I said, "Roseanne Barr today, you tomorrow." And I also clipped her saying, "They won't let us say what we want or stand out because you might be that little spark that gets a whole fire going." And you all know that with your truth and your passion that you can influence someone. And if you're real and you're not faking gay, that's not allowed anymore. You don't have to be a content influencer. I think they know who the errands are. I had someone recently say, he was, "Why would they be targeting me?" Meanwhile, he's had drug use, and MK Ultra goes after those people to control them and compartmentalize and splinter them. And he's like, you're controversial. I'm just a junkie. And I said, how do you know that in a different life you weren't some galactical king? You're not like everybody else. Something's going on. So I think that, that's why they go after teachers. I mean, I did a show on targeting, and I feel like we need to educate people because they don't realize how challenging it is for us to do what we're doing, which is just basically provoking thought and presenting information. And we're just doing our job, right? Like, I'm just doing my job as a journalist.
Yeah, without a doubt. And where do you guys, Charlie, you want to add anything? Did I forget anything?
I was just wondering if anything happened last week of relevance.
Well, I think.
Oh, you mean? I don't know, Charlie. You mean the election?
No.
You know what? Let me jump in because there was another huge story out there that the American media is completely ignoring, and it's one I've been talking about now for over 5 years, and it's actually in court, and the international media is not only backing up everything I've said, but it's worse than I thought. So we're just going to go to it, and we're going to show you how the American media is totally and completely covering this up. So if you type in Conor McGregor right now into a Google search, pretty much the basic stuff. Dreams come true, McGregor, blah, blah, blah. Nothing at all about the fact the guy, and by the way, if you do news, on the very one, it'll say rape accuser telling lies. That's the head news one. If you just do it on Google News, okay, in Dublin court. McGregor's been in court for 4 days. Okay, all the details of him brutally beating and raping that woman in 2018 are out there. Now, you go to the news and you type in McGregor rape. Let's take a look. Court News Ireland, Journal, RTE. You would think that MSN means MSNBC. Nope. It's actually a video of McGregor going to court. Again, none of this covered in the U.S. media for this, from the Daily Mail. And then the other one right here, of course, the headline that MSN posted from the Evening Standard is accuser telling web of lies. Well, I would encourage people to go check out a guy named Paul Healy, who's actually inside reporting for the Irish Mirror, and he's been in court all 4 days. Dude, I mean, it is crazy to me that we live in a world where the international media is reporting on probably the most known sports star in the world savagely beating and raping a woman to the point where they had to use forceps to take a tampon out of her vagina after the fact with another man. So that's the part that I got wrong, everybody, that I didn't know. I thought he had just done it in front of people. Oh, no. He did it with another person. They both raped this woman twice. Okay, so it's
What's
just
going on there, though? Is there drugs? It's
a drug thing. All right, so like for those that don't, I mean, this woman right here, her name is now out there, Nikki Hand, and she went to a party, got picked up by the guy with the other guy. They picked up cocaine. They were all at a hotel doing it, and she ended up in the hospital for 2 weeks, and not naming the guy. I mean, the things they've already shown in court. There is no doubt there was resistance. And he said it was consensual. None of this, let me repeat it again, none of it is being covered in the mainstream media. It's the wildest thing to me.
Why?
So
Why is
my
this?
question is he doing why would he forfeit his entire career? Is this an
Oh, no, he's a cocaine addict. He's from the Kinahan Mafia, everybody. So that if everybody doesn't understand, McGregor came up as an enforcer for the Kinahan Mafia. His sister is about to marry like the number 3 guy in the mob. Okay.
Well, it could have been an initiation. It could have been a gang.
Oh, no, he's done this before and after. He's savagely raped other women as well. He is a serial violent rapist. Listen, you can watch him, I think 3 to 4 weeks ago, after the BKFC, okay? And he's somehow in on this promotion now with his wife there, who's not his wife. Okay, they've never been married. They came up under that same crime family. I'll give you a guess what she was doing for them. All right. And he literally just grabs one of the BKFC champion girl's hair by the ponytail and starts pulling her towards him. And the wife has to come over, and be like, no, not here, Conor. Not now, Conor. Look, he's going to be convicted. It's 100% in my mind. This woman was devastated they didn't bring criminal charges on the guy. Ask yourself right now why Sports Illustrated, ESPN, ABC, MSNBC. By the way, the first day of the trial was election day. Okay, good cover. Yeah, I can understand where they might have missed it there. But it's been going on now for the whole week. We're going to get a judgment probably in a week and a half. He's going to be found guilty. Now, he's not going to do any jail time. But they're still going to try to have to spin this as this is some kind of a gold digger. And to me, man, it's one of those things that just speaks to how corrupt this whole system is and how hot garbage it is. And here's the deal. I also got contacted probably, I don't know, month and a half ago, maybe 2 months ago, time flies, by an ex-BuzzFeed writer. And he's written, I think, for The Atlantic and all these other people. And he was honing in on the McGregor story and asking me about it. And to me, the only reason this guy was even interested, we'll see if he ever puts out a piece, he still hasn't, was because he wanted to connect it to Dana White and Trump. And truth be told, everybody, Trump's the one that got McGregor in the country for the cowboy fight, in January of 20, because at that point they were still thinking about pressing criminal charges with him. They were not letting him out of the country. And you can look it up. I did stories on it. The week, I think within 48 hours of Dana White has lunch with Trump on a jet, Conor McGregor's in the country. And we got a new fight for the guy. And by the way, they tried to not have this trial yet again. It's been extended and extended and extended because all of the fights that he hasn't had. So another little known fact, he had the Chandler fight. So he got an extension that this trial wasn't going to go. He tried to get a last minute extension saying now he was going to fight Dan Hooker. That's imagination land. When the Chandler fight got called off, which was, I don't know, again, month and a half ago, maybe 2 months ago, and they said it was his little toe, just so happened about 3 to 4 hours before they called the fight off, 3 masked men entered the home of the woman I just showed in an armed home invasion where her boyfriend was stabbed in the belly. Okay? So, I mean, I don't know what else to say. This is like out and out, like, crime level stuff with like one of the biggest celebritard weirdos in the world, and no one's reporting on it. Go ahead, Charlie.
Jason, who would be in a position to protect him? I understand the mob.
Oh, come on, bro.
But like the media, why would the media protect him?
The mob.
They love this
The
stuff.
mob.
Well, he's owned by Disney and the mob.
Yeah.
Disney, exactly. Disney that owns Fox, that owns ESPN, WME Entertainment, that is Ari Emanuel, the guy that literally cut the deal, Charlie, where, look it up, Saudi Arabia had invested in the UFC, prior to them going public, and I think selling for like $8 billion. Now, for those that don't know, Ari Emanuel is Rahm Emanuel's brother. And he's also the guy that was portrayed by Jeremy Piven in Entourage. That's the character, okay? Dual Israeli citizen, by the way. I'm sure everybody loves that. So Ari Emanuel takes that investment, and I think less than 6 months before they go public, makes them take it back with no profit margin under the guise of the Jamal Khashoggi murder. And then they go public for billions. That's the kind of juice a guy like that has. And I'm going to point to this and I'm going to shut up. Dana White recently did a podcast, the Two Bears, One Cave podcast. Everybody loves it. Bert Kreischer, very lovable.
No, but nobody loves it. Yeah.
I would encourage people to watch Mr. Segura and Mr. Kreischer with Dana White, because there's this part in the interview where Dana White starts talking about Conor McGregor and how smart he is. And then, almost like a Freudian slip, within 30 seconds of that conversation, he goes, you know what my job is? He goes, there's a lot of bad guys that are in the UFC that do some bad things. He goes, my job is that you don't know who they are. he literally says that.
I think they do that. I've seen it's like it's a soft disclosure. They do soft
It's literally in the same take. It doesn't seem like it was edited in to do it. That he's not suggesting McGregor, but he literally says that's his job. And yes, it is the fight game. And I've been around some fighters, some nicer than others. Okay. But yes, go ahead, Charlie.
But his leg injuries cooked him. He doesn't have a career anymore.
Oh no,
100%.
And he's selling whiskey and he's mobbed up. And the new mob is Disney, and that's the family. He's never fighting again. You're right.
It's so fucking gross.
No,
So
he'll
so when
do,
when he's a
he'll do
convicted
a-
rapist,
he'll do a
in 2
pre-arrange
weeks.
if pre-conviction he can get away with doing a scripted fight against Jake Paul for a whole bunch of money. He'll probably do that and try to avoid whatever he can. But no, that guy's dirty. And Jason, as well or better than I do, John Fitch's story and what he's been going through with a ton of other previous competitors and performers in the UFC, as far as that particular lawsuit, which is advancing. And
what about the politics that he's all the rumors that he's getting into politics?
Who, Dana?
I mean, it tracks.
No, Connor.
Oh, that's even worse. That's another reason. First of all, let's speak to that for a second, okay? Because look, the guy called for the lockdowns. Okay, he said a lockdown united. He panned out for the establishment thing right away, and I already knew he was a rapist then. Okay, a violent one. I mean, again, guys, anybody that has kids, a sister, a mother, with the details of this, there's no gray. It's black and white. Okay. So I saw him starting to talk out and speak up. I did an hour on the 4th hour of the Alex Jones show on a Friday. Now that's prime Alex Jones 4th hour, because you get the replay until the Sunday show. It irked Alex so much that maybe 15 minutes into the broadcast, he's like, I love Jason Burmis, but he's sitting there and he spends an hour on McGregor. And yeah, does he like to rough up women? Okay, but 20 minutes. Within 2 weeks, he's talking about his political career. Who's ahead of the game? What, you don't think they want a compromised rapist, celebritard, cokehead in office? They've got a baker's dozen of them throughout the world. What are you talking? They love it.
Yeah.
They love it.
Part of the inverted matrix. I'm sorry, just say part of the inverted matrix of glorifying criminals and putting people in prison that are God-loving or doing the right thing. I mean, I know now enough whistleblowers that saw corruption in the government and were reporting it. Like, I know 2 DOJ that were with the prison system. He's an ophthalmologist, and he witnessed some corruption that they weren't quantifying the prisoners' improvements, and he went and put it on record, and they siphoned $300,000 from his bank account. They created a bank account and a company the same and added a suffix or whatever. They took out 300,000. Everything that whenever they send something, they have 2 vaccine injured children. And this is what they are doing. I mean, I've mentioned what they've done to Mark Renon, who was arrested for peddling fake COVID cures in the same operation that came after me. If we consider the taxpayers' money that goes to diesel therapy, that goes to, it's all part of this inverted matrix. Can I share something about Derek Chauvin? I want to say that it's going to be a year, and on Black Friday, he got shanked 22nd times, and that when he got shanked, I reached out to the prison system, only later to recently find out that the federal government is talking about me and describing me. Oh, someone reached out to speak to you, but she's a conspiracy theorist. She directed a film on bees. Didn't say my name. And then when he went pro se, because I'm looking at the docket, I know that he's an FBI informant, and I'm asking myself, how is he still in jail, but a Mexican cartel member and also an FBI informant? Like, something's off. So what the truth is that he got signed up at 19 as an FBI informant, and he never ratted out his cartel. And so he's in jail, and now he's going pro se. I know they keep on pushing the trial. So I'm reading the dockets, looking at the patterns, and then I see he's stuck with one lawyer. So I suss him out. He doesn't seem like he's, a Mason and a good guy. And I said, can you tell John that I want to write to him? And so in the meanwhile, I had put in another request. So they're flooded because he's going pro se. This is like all the wanting him to offer money to get an exclusive. And then the lawyer goes, oh, you're going to love this one, stranger. That's his nickname. He's like, she'd make a great pen pal. And he goes, stop fucking with me, old man. Is she at least hot? And he goes, smoking. In this picture, she's covered in bees, if you can imagine that. And he goes, it's the bee lady. He didn't even know it's my nickname. And so he goes, what's her name? Anyway. And he says, Miriam. And he goes, he got flushed with electricity, that his whole body, he goes, do you know, he converted to Islam. So he says, do you know that that's the holiest of names, and that he prayed for a female, intelligent, courageous journalist? So he writes to me, he goes, I'm giving it all to you, Miriam. I'm the only one who knows what the weapon is and how he fashioned it. And they sent Derek to a prison where it's usually OG gang leaders. So I think they fed him to the wolves, and they social engineered, and they expected someone like John Tursak to take him as a trophy, and, kill a dirty cop. And the irony is, he punctured his lungs, and he's in the hospital. And guess what he says? I can't breathe. The irony. So I'm sharing this with you guys. He wants to try to put me on a special prison list. And I'm like, John, that's never going to happen. You want me to raise money for you? I don't have a GoFundMe. I said, I don't think you realize how, and so now the FBI knows that I have stuff on them. This is a big story. It's going to be a year anniversary. Nobody gives a shit. Nobody's, I'm going to do my own rounds and write about him. I'm the only one who, he sent me a photo of himself. He calls me Mama B. So, and I wanted to share that because it is news, and the mainstream don't have it. And I don't think they'd allow me to share that, And I don't know what the repercussions are either, really, to shit on the FBI.
I'm in favor of it for what it's worth.
Hey, can I totally shift gears with a question, you guys? Because I've heard this out there, totally shifting gears, if you will, because everything's been great. But I heard that on election night, you know how last time around, I should say, in 2020, the thing was stolen in Pennsylvania, and the white vans show up and all the ballots are there. I was heard that it was observed at 3:30 in the morning in Pennsylvania that the white vans showed up again, and the margin was actually less, and somehow, for some reason, there was a stand down, and they didn't try and do what now is obvious that they did last time just by the voter count. Does anyone have any info on that, on a possible stand down of the white vans in Pennsylvania and other places? Too big to rig kind of thing?
I would like to say that Zach told me that they're saying that the Trump won because of the Hispanic vote, and that the left is now wondering whether there's election rigging, which there's been for a long time. I mean, it's the Democrats that put out kill chain in 2020 about Dominion. And so they're kind of gaslighting the left. But I don't know to that. It seems like they did rig the election. It's not that it's not representative of what the people want, but I think they're gaslighting the left. And I just want to say, if the left is woke and not critical, and the right is not going to criticize themselves. How are we going to get through from here on out for the next 4 years? I'm just wondering what your thoughts are. I don't know about the vans personally.
Well, I'll talk for Steve when I say we did it. We won, right, Steve?
I've been saying for the last 3.5 years that Donald Trump was going to be the president in 2024.
Me too.
This is that none of this surprises me. I've laid out all of the reasons why I think the PayPal mafia is in the White House, as far as the next 4 years go. And yeah, no, I mean, we went from, because there's, from what I understand, no way Elon Musk or RFK Jr. is getting anywhere near the administration. The Pompeo thing was an absolute red herring so that nobody would notice who Susie Wiles really is, or who Brian Hook is, or who any of the other neocons that are getting inserted into the administration are. And, yeah, we got a big online win because people said no to Mike Pompeo, who had ruined his brand over the last 4 years. And if we know anything about the Trump legacy, it's that, he's very, very, very aware of how people's individual brands reflect on him. And sometimes you wind up with John Bolton as your national security advisor because, according to him, he needed a pit bull in the room, right? He needed an attack dog. He needed somebody that everybody knew was just crazy and wanted to, for funsies, because it was Tuesday, a little bit before tea time, carpet bomb your country. That's who John Bolton is. And that's, go ahead, Charlie.
Well, I was just gonna say, don't worry about Mike Pompeo though, because rumor has it that he signed a great sponsorship deal with Ozempic to be their spokesperson going forward.
Wow.
Not really looks like it. That's what
human garbage.
Joking? Are you joking?
That fucking
But
asshole.
no,
They should
no.
drop him out of a B-52 over Iraq.
He
No,
looks
this
like
is a live exercise.
he looks like neocon
exercise.
Kucinich right now. He really does. He looks like if there was a bizarro world Dennis Kucinich, that's Mike Pompeo now. But
Let's start a rumor that it's because he has AIDS. Let's do that instead.
Elsie Stefanik taking Nikki Haley's old job because nobody likes Nikki Haley.
Was
Why?
Ben
Is he
Shapiro
super
unavailable? Holy shit. Why don't we just
Charlie.
put Benjamin Netanyahu in there while we're at it?
Is he super skinny? I haven't seen. I've
Yeah.
blocked
Yeah.
out. Oh, so maybe he is taking Ozempic.
Yeah,
he went Al Sharpton.
Oh,
Elise
yeah.
Stefanik is your Netanyahu in the administration. Did you see that?
Yeah.
She's the UN ambassador, and she was the one who got Jewish university professors fired for being not pro-Israel enough. And we're not worried about Trump bombing Iran. I'm a little worried about that.
I want to share that I have a friend that 4 years ago blocked me when I started reporting on the Rona, and then maybe a year later I just sent him a message and I said, "Hey Joe," and he wrote back. He goes, "Have you heard of Klaus Schwab?" And I laughed. This was like 2021. I'm like, "Yeah, buddy." I said, "Does this mean we could talk now?" So it's interesting to see his trajectory, because now he's pro-Trump, and he commended, "Oh, it's so good we got those neocons out." So it's interesting to hear. I mean, I don't doubt it that it's got more neocons, just different flavor. It's interesting, people's psychology or their awakening process, and then when you realize it's all fake and gay.
You know what people are saying against all this conversation here, and I kind of tend to agree with them because I wasn't there, is we're kind of black pilling it. I mean, this is by all measure at least a ray of hope. The only question is, will he follow through? Because we like everything he's saying about dismantling the deep state, eliminating censorship. We like all that. So the only question is, will he deliver? So I got to resist the black pill everything's horrible. The whole world is
I
crumbling.
agree.
He didn't
say
deliver
that.
the first time on that.
Time out. Alex, no. There's
Yeah.
no one more black-pilled on the entire face of God's green earth than someone who thinks you can vote your way out of an international oligarchy. You've already ceded most of your power and you've just given up and going, okay, well, maybe the lesser of two evils is going to be a little less eviler than the last evil. That's the most black-pilled thing I can absolutely think of. What at least what we talk about on my shows is all of the ways that you can be a productive, active, positive, helpful member of your community so that you can be as self-sufficient as humanly possible and as far away from the 100% promise to you by no matter what Zionist puppet is in the White House, technocratic future as humanly possible. That's not black pilled, my friend. That is
It sure sounds like black pill. It sure sounds like black. It sure sounds black pill to me.
Alex.
Can I be the middle ground? Because obviously,
Wait, look, can we get Monica in here because she's been
What are you
waiting.
trying to say? I just want to ask Alex why Trump didn't dismantle the deep state the first time.
I can answer that.
100% agree. I've been drawing everyone's attention to Pizzagate. Pizzagate was low-hanging fruit, right? Stop sex crimes against children, you know? And he ran
So
on that.
why didn't he, do you think? Like, I'm literally
I am totally down with what you're saying. But the point is, so let's all be in the position of saying, I like the rhetoric, deliver.
I just actually think there's an answer to my question, which is that I think the answer, like the way this dialogue is supposed to go is because he didn't have a mandate, like people weren't completely convinced, blah, blah, blah. And that's the reason I think they didn't follow through with any kind of stealing. And they gave him the entire, like a resounding popular vote victory, which is unheard of for Republicans, because now they're going to say he has the mandate. That should make you feel good. But my fear is that he's going to take that mandate, bomb Iran, and now the pro-Palestinian protesters who've been restrained because there's a Democrat in the White House are going to come out in absolute full force, totally unrestrained. You get a kind of Vietnam type feel, and then the coup de grace, I fear, and will be responsible for it because he has a clear mandate, is the Secret Service thing. I think is the sleeper psyop. They recommended that it get totally centralized on the top and become totally interoperable with the local law enforcement. And this is in response to something that happened in Butler, Pennsylvania. So I'm saying that's the level of local law enforcement Secret Service is going to be interoperable with. They're going to take out all the divisions and they want to bring an outsider in to run it from the top, who I think might well be Eric Prince. So then you've got a big problem, which is not only do you have a national police force, but you have it set up so you could actually have some kind of crazy coup. Because I've heard the mercenaries say that the only way you could really get a coup in this country is the mercenaries. They understand how to use the big equipment. I mean, that's very highly speculative, layered upon layer, but that is one scenario where the pieces fit together from why did the election go this way? What do we expect from Trump 2.0? I think, it might be something big. And they fired all their guns at once. They had everybody, even Ron Paul at the end was like, if I were going to vote, I mean, everybody blew their cover. I'm not saying
even
Ron
Bill
Paul's his
Maher.
fault. He's got a stroke. He's 89, whatever. But you know what I'm saying? Everybody's in the pool.
Well,
why can't we have both? Why can't we hope for some change and hope for some of this stuff,
pray.
and also be aware that we don't trust any of this stuff. But I mean, this is the first time that all these that there has been a team saying all the right things like this, and it's been mandated. Like there is a little bit of hope that we can at least ride the narrative switch for a little bit.
Brace for the worst.
We know that
Brace
it's all
for the
bullshit, but
worst.
it's way better than if it was
Hope
the opposite.
for the best.
Yes. I would like
Brace
to also
for the worst. Hope for the best. That's how you gotta live your life on a fucking your head on a swivel, dude. Like I'm 52 years old. I've been led down this road before, but it's like, listen, I've said this before. I'll say it again. I'm treating Trump's candidacy like every single Las Vegas Raiders season. We're going into it, I think we're going to win the Super Bowl, and then maybe 3 weeks in, the train goes off the tracks. That's just how I got to live the life. But to go, I think to go black pill, maybe there needs to be some black pill people. Maybe there needs to be some people out there shouting to people like us that, hey man, don't buy into this hook, line, and sinker. But I do think it's very counterproductive just to be like, everything's going to be awful. Maybe we get a little bit of everything. I don't know, ma'am. I don't know.
So if I can say something to that.
I just want him to free Ross. I'll never criticize him again. If he just frees Ross, that would be one solid thing.
So let me just try to jump in here. Number one, I'm going to come at the perspective that this was really too big to rig. That I really believe Trump probably got another 5 million votes, popular vote style. I honestly think he probably swept every damn state. I have a hard time believing otherwise. If we had free and fair elections, I still don't think we do. I look at those swing states, and literally, if you look at the Wisconsin jump, it very much looks too big to rig. It almost looks like what you saw in Pennsylvania the last time around. Okay, now that's, again, my opinion. I know there's some people that have different. I don't know this guy's getting sworn in yet. We got 70 days left, or 69 days, something like that. I really think there's still and by the way, he just named his national security advisor. JD Vance is a lot slicker of a talker than I thought he was. He's still on my radar. I'm not jumping on the Vance train, but I'll say this. Out of the gates, he's already called Poot. Hey, that's a start. It's been several years since fucking Putin has been in communication with anyone on the administrative level. Now, that does not mean that he's going to deliver on Ukraine, Russia done day one. Here's my hopium. I'd love to believe it. Right now, it's still a possibility. And let me just throw this into the mix with you. 2 weeks ago when we had this show, I told you guys I had Giuliani on the next morning, which I did. And he didn't walk off. I got my questions in about 9/11. Rudy Giuliani ended up loving me. Well, I want to break what he said to me off air here for the first time. But out of nowhere during the end of the conversation, he brought up the United Nations and the Summit of the Future. Now, this is a guy that prosecuted mafia guys. And at the same time, if you're the mayor of New York City, it's hard pressed that you don't got a little bit of mafia in you, right? He starts talking about the Summit of the Future and how no one covered it, and global governance and global government as if it's a bad thing. I think the guy may have some blind spots. Now, on the topic of World Trade Center Building 7, I brought up his city corporation counsel, Mike Hess, and he said yes. And he basically, without me prompting him, talked about the CIA and the Secret Service being in the building, and that they had all these documents on the outside. Now, he toed the line on the story, no doubt about it. Now, after we hung up, and he says he's going to come back on, we can discuss it further, so I'm not like betraying any confidences here. I looked at him and I said, you don't think they demoed that building in 7? And he goes, I don't, because of the documents. He goes, however, if the CIA wanted to destroy something, then they absolutely could have done it that way. And he goes, frankly, with all the conspiracy theories that have come true, I don't necessarily put it past them, and I'm open to everything. Had you told me 20 years ago I was going to have that conversation with Rudy fucking Giuliani, I wouldn't have believed you. And I think that I think I can get him back on my show and go on the record that much further. And by the way, the guy said declassify every 9/11 document. Now, again, that's a Donnie T promise. Am I getting that promise? Probably not. I really hope so. But that's another level of hopium for me. But the alternative was so fist you in the asshole violent that I don't know that there was one. Right? Like that's
happy right now.
I'm just saying, like, if you think about it, even the ones that were trying to be the holdouts, right? Like the holdout pseudo-intellectual Rogans, we all knew the podcast train of Rogan acolytes was ending with Donnie T on Joe Rogan. Even on the final day, he went with it, right? I mean, the guy's imperfect. I'll say it. You know, it's one of those things. You guys are talking about Iran. I talked to a total war hawk today for almost an hour. He just wrote House of Iran. He got nominated for the Nobel Peace Prize in 2006. His name, I believe, is what was it? Ken Zimmerman? I want to get it right because I'm sure someone's going to look him up and be like, wow, he's done some bad things. He was a really nice guy. I think he really believes a lot of his own, bullshit. Now, we talked about Soleimani. He seemed to want peace, but he doesn't think it's going to happen. He thinks the Israeli thing is going to spill over. I hope not. That's the other thing. We had this conversation 2 weeks ago. Unfortunately, I don't see a world where Israel isn't going to do whatever the fuck Israel wants to do, unfortunately. The only thing that really stops them is opposition force, which is very few and far between. And unfortunately, opposition force that pushes them back on a large scale could only escalate global warfare. It won't bring it down, in my opinion. Go ahead,
well,
Steve.
hey, at least they're getting a blank check now. Honestly, I think the best thing that's come out of this election cycle is that our good friend Sam Tripoli here is now Joe Rogan Eskimo Brothers with President-elect Donald Trump. Congratulations, Sam.
Nice, Sam.
Yes, I love it. And nobody's giving me credit for it, and it upsets me, but I'm fine with it. So here's what I want to say, a couple things real quick. And, I have a personal relationship with the guy. The one thing I want to say about Joe is a human being. At the center of this is a human being. And he's a guy who has his strengths and his weaknesses. And he believes some things and don't believe other things. And he also is a guy who is keeping a giant juggernaut of a media empire on the tracks. That's, I think, if I was put in his position, it would instantly crash, because my inability to keep my emotions out of it and my desire to talk about the dangerous that gets me in trouble all the time, And so that's what I got to say. My best friend is Eddie Bravo. Eddie Bravo's as paranoid as anybody I know. And Eddie Bravo's been best friends with Joe Rogan forever. And I would tell you, based on the personal conversations I have, Joe Rogan's growth over time that you've seen on the show is who is the real growth behind the man. And I get in a lot of trouble for saying this because everybody thinks it's some kind of weird suck up that I'm doing with this guy. I just know him on a personal level, and he's saved my life many times. So, it's like, I would be quiet. I would be quiet if I thought it wasn't true. If I thought he was the guy a lot of people think he is. Now, I could have a blind spot, but based on the personal conversations I have, this is what this dude believes. And
I think that's what I've realized too, as I've gotten to be friends with some of my heroes and stuff like that, is like, people think that they're bought off or they're this or they're that. And it's like, no, this is actually who these people are. You talk to them,
crazy to me.
Everyone I know off the mic that I'm like, people think that I'm associated with on the mic, like Tim Pool or whatever, that's who he is. He's just this autistic dude who loves the news and loves to talk about politics, and he loves Donald Trump. That's who he is now. And yes, he started with the Occupy Wall Street movement, and he was a lefty, and now he's not. Okay? That's the actual evolution. People think he's just chasing the bucks. It's no, he's actually evolved as a person. Now, you don't have to agree with him. I disagree with him. I argue with him on his show about stuff. Yeah. But I'm just saying, most of the time, these people are not actually changing their opinions to grab an audience as much as that's just who they are now.
And I would say this, it's like when a narrative is bought by 90% of the population or 70% of the population, it's not that crazy for these people to believe the same shit. So when you get into, when Rogan had testing people for COVID, well, most people were believing that narrative. It wasn't it's the people here on this show, the handful of us that were like, no, that's not right. Now, hindsight, they all, Dave Smith, who I think is one of the best minds out there, he was talking about wearing masks. you know, but we know where Dave Smith is now. The guys on this show, everybody's seen these little rectangles. You guys are the dangerous. I'm the dangerous. We see the playbook and we know what they're doing, so we see it before a lot of people do. Not everybody does it, man. I honestly believe this. 80% of the population has, I would say actually 90%. 80% of the population are normies. On the far left are the super conformists, and on the far right are the renegades. So 90% have no ability to understand the basics of what we talk about on this show and in our own personal shows. They just can't understand it. Now, I've been with my girlfriend 20 years. Don't ask me why we haven't got married. Sometimes I talk about I wish I would have gotten married so I could have gotten divorced by now, okay? So I love her to pieces. She could not hate conspiracies more until P. Diddy. And now, literally, she came up to me and she's like, yeah, Katy Perry's part of it. I go, part of what? She goes, and she just threw out this. I go, are you throwing Illuminati signs? She goes, she's part of that group. This chick can't stop. She couldn't stop watching Rachel Maddow forever. So, I mean, like everybody, there's something that comes along that wakes people up.
Yeah.
And so I would tell you that at the center of this juggernaut is a man, one dude, and he has his flaws and he has more strengths than more people than I know. But he also, you know, is a human being like each one of us in these rectangles are. And I get a lot of shit for it, but it's like I've known that guy since I was an open micer at the Comedy Store. And the guy's never the guy who was making people, you know, eat horse sauce on Fear Factor. You know, I mean, like that's the dude. So I would tell you my final thing I'll say, Char, hold on, is that the guy is also the face of two things that weren't around 30 years ago. And that was the UFC and podcasting. And the only reason he got in the UFC is because he's best friend with Eddie Bravo, who was just jiu-jitsu Jesus. And he worked for free forever. And now we see where he's at. I'm going to get murdered by everybody for defending my friend because apparently that's not like where I'm from. Like you defend your friends who have helped you when they had no reason to help you outside of being friends. That's to me, I'm old school like that, but I've been told that's a sign of weakness is defending people that you love. But
no, it's not.
You know, so
you should absolutely do that, Sammy. I catch shit for defending you.
I'm sorry about that, dude. My mom can be weird.
No, man, no, go ahead, do that shit, dude. You're supposed to. You can also recognize that the allowable parameters of any given conversation in a more or less mainstream media space, and you can't deny that one of the biggest drawers of audience in the planet isn't mainstream, is, you know, something that needs to at least be looked at, not necessarily in terms of the host, but in terms of the, again, parameters of allowable conversation in the space. Because you and I both know, Sam, that on your show, on Dave's show, on Charlie's show, Graham's show, Miriam, everybody here will go a little bit further out because we're allowed to, because the audience that we're talking to is a little bit weirder than, you know, the people who are driving a truck listening to Rogan for 3 hours a day, twice a week. We know that. That's not to shit on the environment, it's to recognize it. And that's all I really want people to do, is just recognize that, you know, it's a vast landscape and some of it is carefully manicured.
Well, you're just outlining how the construct works. It's not like Clint said, I would hope that we evolve and we're not the same people. I'm not the same person I was an hour ago, let alone 4 years ago. It doesn't mean you've sold out. It means you've evolved. And but there are constraints within the matrix.
Just to clarify my point, though, there are people that sell out. Chris Cuomo's one of them. Go ahead, Charlie.
For sure. we get the benefit of our learning curve being private, right? All of us that aren't Joe Rogan, like we believe different things years ago, and we learned over time, oh, I changed my opinion about that. Oh, I got some new information. And our learning curve has been hidden. Somebody like Rogan, his learning curve is out in public for everybody to see it, to see how long he was wrong on a certain topic until he finally figured it out. We've all done that, right? I mean, we've all been wrong and or believed the narrative, and then we thought, oh wait, this and so if our learning curves were out in front of 15 million people a week, we'd look like assholes too. You know what I mean? Like people would be like, dude, you were so wrong about this. Yeah, of course. We've all been wrong about it. It's just that ours isn't broadcast to the entire world. And by the time we finally had a voice, we were pretty far up the curve. And we're not talking about like 19 Arab hijackers, doing 9/11, right? So we're sort of beyond that, but not everybody gets the luxury of having that be private.
But also, like,
you're talking Justin Bieber too. Like we watch this guy grow up, and now we know what they were doing to him, and like, how would we be perceived if we went through our awkward stages in front of everybody? We would be lit the fuck up, dog. You know what I'm saying? So yeah, I got you. Sorry to cut you off, Clint.
Oh, no worries. I was just going to say, I've been a fan of Rogan since 2010, I think, like episode 40 or something. I don't even know. Tripoli might have been the guest. But as soon as I found it, I stayed up until the sun came up, and I listened to like his entire catalog all the way back to 1. And man, the first episode was dog shit. But setting that aside, I absolutely loved it. I was like, this is the genuine conversation I've been looking for years and years and years. It made me fall in love with podcasts. Like literally overnight, I was the biggest podcast fan. And the fact that like I'm now in this industry is totally inspired by that period. But I just wanted to say one thing about Rogan. Like, I think the reason he's so successful is because he's not ideologically rigid. Like in my world as a libertarian commentator, like you kind of have to be ideologically rigid lest you lose your current audience, because they'll be like, oh, well, what are you, a statist now? But Rogan, like he's been this guy his entire career. Like you listen to him, he'll have on Bernie Sanders and he'll agree with him on universal health care and UBI. And then he has on Peter Schiff and he's like, yeah, sound money. And we got to get rid of the welfare state. And it's like, but he sees the arguments on both sides. I don't think he's flip-flopping as much as he's just a very open-minded guy that's thinking these things through on the fly. And that's why I wasn't at all surprised that he ultimately ended up endorsing Donald Trump, especially after Kamala, put the restrictions on whether or not 45 minutes and you got to come to me and it's going to be scripted and it's got to be tape delayed and we get to have ultimately editing rights. It's like, yeah, well, that ain't fucking happening. Who do you think you're talking to? So I think it's much ado about nothing, honestly.
I agree. I had this conversation with James Corbett last time he was on. He was on a week or two ago, and we're talking about the new alternative media, and he wanted my thoughts on what I thought about, some of the new alternative media community, the Tuckers, the Rogans, the people that are, the mainstream new alternative media. And, we had this discussion about how during COVID, there was a lot of people prior to COVID in our personal lives that you talk to them about vaccines, you talk to them about anything that is conspiratorial just a little bit, and they'll dismiss it immediately. And some of those people, years later, or sometime later, are now asking you about those same topics that they were dismissing. And, what James and I were discussing were the idea that some of these people who have these platforms, they could be those people in your own personal life. They could be those people that are transitioning, that are having some type of awakening. And like somebody mentioned, it might have been Charlie or Clint, who talked about how like they're doing it on the air. So if their ideas are evolving, you're witnessing it at the same time. And so sometimes people, in our community will point at or highlight somebody who said something we didn't like at one point and now are saying something we do like, and we're like, hey, look, they used to say this. Well, I think that's okay, because I want to build bridges, not burn them. And the truth is, like, they could have organically transitioned. Their ideas could have evolved. That does happen. And not to say that that's always the case. Obviously, there's going to be, some cases where it is just a psyop or whatnot. But I think, when Rogan had Robert Kennedy Jr. on, to me, that was a big moment, because I remember having Del Bigtree on my show some years ago and mentioning to him, I'm like, hey, how do we get you or Kennedy on Rogan. And Del Bigtree said on my show, he's like, we have a lot of mutual friends. He's like, Kennedy has reached out. His people have reached out to him. He's like, my people have reached out. He's like, he will not have us on. I think he called him a wuss. He's like, he's a pussy. He's a wuss. He's like, he will not have us on. And then, years later, he has him on. And Rogan said it himself on the air multiple times. He's like, I honestly thought Kennedy was a crazy person. He's like, I didn't take him seriously. And now he's openly questioning everything that has to do with Big Pharma, talking about the threat of their power and how, their lobbying power, their marketing power, their, all these things, questioning. I mean, just a recent episode I listened to, it might have been one that came out last week where he was talking about, why are we giving hep shots to the newborns? And like, he's doing things that like years ago, I would have never fathomed him questioning these things on the air, maybe privately with Eddie Bravo or Sam, having a steak dinner, but not on the air. So like, to me, like, I think we've watched him evolve. And I think in some cases, even like a Tucker, we talked about Tucker with James Corbett when he was on, like, I get it. He was on Crosstalk. He was on, mainstream media. It's not to say that he couldn't have, open his mind to new possibilities in regards to how the world works. So
that's him personally, but there is the Overton window and there are the constraints. And like Sam said, we're the dangerous. And then as the Overton window evolves, then they capture. I mean, I think for certain people who were talking about Big Pharma a long time ago and had a #1 movie in this country, it's like, why do some get to, because, and then you have to consider that. So why, for me, it's like, there's this personal evolution of a soul, basically, and their intellect and their own karma and dharma. But then there's the very real Overton window. And I wouldn't have as much of a problem if I didn't lose my livelihood, literally, having the government come after me for standing up for Big Pharma. So for some of those, it's like, it's great that now you're introducing this to the peoples are ready to hear incrementally the truth. It's just like, why do others get their asses kicked? And I think it's because they know who they can groom that will stay within the pen. I'm a wild card. They can't bank on me. I might go off the reservation. So
that's well said, Ricky. I mean, I think we have to add in there guilt by association, and we got to be careful of that too. Just because two people worked together in the past doesn't mean that one guy is compromised and he might have went through this whole thing. I mean, even with somebody in pharma with pharma experience, who knows if they haven't now realized, like, they've kind of come to Jesus, so to say, and for me, ready to look at things a little bit differently. I think we got to be really careful not to paint people with this broad brush just because they've had some kind of past without direct evidence. I mean, controlled op is just now it's everywhere that I think we have to be careful that there's not some direct evidence showing that.
But it doesn't
compromised.
It doesn't have to be controlled op. It's if you're what Sam says, safe, dangerous, you're going to get promoted over somebody who's dangerous. It's like Guido Preparato's book, Conjuring Hitler, or it reminds me of The Life of Brian. Like, they're all standing on soapboxes and who gets picked? They're standing on soapboxes, somebody gets picked. And if your instincts tell you not to cross that line, just your self-preservation. And I saw this when I was in radio, my self-preservation was like, don't talk, I'm on a neoconservative radio station. Don't talk about Israel. Don't talk about 9/11. And I didn't talk about abortion because it just wasn't, everybody was talking about it. And then towards the end, I had a new producer and he's like, you should just let your hair down. I've heard your podcast, say what you want. So on the show when I got fired, like the next day, I talked about COVID, 9/11, and the Boston Marathon bombing because my instincts were right. And now what? Then I didn't have the platform anymore. So that's one way to do it. And I think that's what Paul did.
This is why I've talked about the whole controlled opportunist thing for the better part of a year now. Because it's less about the individual and more about the environment. And the environment itself already has a whole bunch of different parameters that everybody knows what they can and can't say.
Agreed.
Depending on what platform they're on, depending on what audience they're talking to. It's already mass self-censorship across the board. So then people become incentivized to do things a particular way. If it looks like XYZ is trending, then the people who are prone to both business savvy and some craven opportunism are going to jump on bandwagon to bandwagon to bandwagon in order to elevate their status and their overall situation in life. I'm not even trying to say there's anything wrong with that. I want everybody to fucking recognize that. Everybody got to eat. Everybody got bills to pay. A lot of us have kids. You know, I'm not trying to fault you for what you're doing. What I'm trying to get people to do is recognize what the landscape looks like, and then with discernment go, okay, well, clearly there's only so far this person is going to go. There's only so far that person's going to go. This person is going to spurg out on one particular rabbit hole for their entire life, and you're going to get some really good information out of it, and you're going to get some really bad information out of it. But, you know, just go in informed. That's all.
Monica,
That's all I fucking want.
Can I ask you a question, Monica,
Yeah.
real quick?
Yeah.
Do you regret it? Do you regret going over that line?
No, but for a weird reason, like I got super nervous. I didn't like doing it. I only did it because I thought like I was on a mission from God to like, you know, teach Rush Limbaugh supporters about Ron Paul. So it was almost like a relief of the burden. But the two great things about it was that I did reach people who weren't in a silo already. It wasn't an echo chamber. And people called. So Atlanta was half Black, and you had people calling saying like, we don't want reparations. Like that was extremely valuable. So maybe should I have been smarter about it and kept my seat at the table for that reason? You know, if I really was on a mission, then yes, I guess I should have. But you know, for me, it was fine. It was like God's will. So I was fine either way. But I heard somebody say something really weird, and I thought there was a possibility. I'd love to know what you think about this, that we're all here saying whatever we want because we are actually vetting it. Like we're getting people to talk about what we're really thinking. They get to see how many people listen to us, who listens to us. Like, I know that's a crazy thought, but like many are called, and some are chosen for one role, some are chosen for other roles. Is it that crafted? Like, do we, you know what I mean? Like, how bad is it?
Well, I think it's your personal, again, evolution. If you distill it, I mean, since my Kundalini awakening, it's like, oh yeah, all that remains is the soul. What are you going to take with you? And trust me, you will come back and keep on doing your mistakes. And we are living in an opportunity where there's an acceleration, and everybody has their own process, their own wounds, I believe, their own lifetimes. I do believe I've come here many times and have persecution energy, and I regret it, Sam. I wish I was more discerning. I have learned that the frequency of authenticity is the highest, and some people can't fake it. And in my case, I wish I showed more restraint. I think it's smart, Monica. I wonder where I would have gone in my career in the mainstream. But I remember I was working for Channel 4 in Burbank above Days of Our Lives. And I was covering the news, and it was a time when the internet was just coming online. And I was producing the news, but it was the advertising that was in charge, not the newsroom. And there was a guy on the freeway that blew his brains during the sweeps, and he had a gripe against the HMO. So I left that day and I called Tom Lycos on AM radio, and I gave them an inner scoop. I was disgusted that they didn't even address this man's story. They blew his brains out. The chopper pulled back. I was watching the chopper feed, and then they put a psychology, like if you've been, if you've been impacted by seeing this, call this psychologist or hotline.
I watched that, Monica.
You did?
Or Miriam. I watched that. Yeah.
Did?
I was in LA back then. I watched that.
So that, well,
guy with the dog on the freeway.
Yeah. And I went to KPFK to try to bring justice to this guy's story, because he threw a backpack over the edge. No one ever covered his story about why the fuck he blew his brain. He was gonna first he tried to set a Molotov cocktail. He had his cats and dogs with him. Then he went over the edge and he was going to jump off. And then he took out a rifle and blew his brains out on television. So I go on Tom Lycos and I give them the inner scoop. The next day, this manager, who I don't think has ever even heard me speak, I was producing the news online, goes, can I speak to you for a second? And I go in the hallway, goes, were you on the radio yesterday? And I'm like, yeah. He goes, you know, you could lose your job if I went and spoke to the general manager. And meanwhile, I'm just reporting the fucking truth. And so I got to see how, you know, I started getting an inkling of how it works. Anyway, I don't even know why I got to that story.
It reminds me of the Chomsky interview back a million years ago when he wasn't such a lunatic, but he's having that interaction with the British reporter, I guess at BBC, and the BBC guy goes, what are you saying? I don't believe what I'm saying here, that I'm just not making it. He goes, no. I what I'm saying is, if you believe something different, you wouldn't be sitting there. And that's part of it, right? Like, you're not going to be sitting in the chair unless you're on board with the team, right? And if you're not on board with the team, then get the fuck out. They're going to get rid of you. So
yeah, Sean Hannity doesn't have that CIA lapel pin because he was told to. It's because that's who the fuck that guy is, and that's why he's got that job.
Right.
My pushback against Israel right now and what they're doing in Gaza, I guarantee you, has caused me a lot of problems. And even though I live with a girl who's Jewish, they don't fucking care. And I know it's causing me problems. And my stances in LA are causing me problems. Even though no matter how much I turned out that everything I said was right, it's still causing me problems. And it just sucks because at some point, like I was doing Jimmy Dore's show and it was great. And I brought up Monica. I should have gave you a little credit on, but I brought up the sparse pandemic simulation, and I broke down what you told me about the suing of the fund, and then the government refilling the fund up, and then them and some woman yelled in the thing, "Sam Tripoli's always right," and I go, "Thank you," but. It's sad because nobody will ever realize it till we've moved on to our next thing.
Timing matters. And once it's obvious, everyone will say, well, everybody knew that. But before it's obvious, you get canceled.
Well, look at these scumbags like Chris Cuomo trying to pretend as if he was some moderate on the lockdown era when he was one of the most aggressive lockdowners. This is why I have such affinity for my good friend Dave Smith, is that he goes in there into the Lion's Den and just fucking brings receipts. And you know, Chris Cuomo was like, I hate how they treated Joe Rogan. It's like, bitch, you treated Joe Rogan like that. Pull up the clip. And PBD's, crack producer crew brings it up live, and it's just like, yeah, that was you, dude. I just want to make one point. This is kind of
he was wrong. He still wouldn't admit it.
No, even after the receipts are sitting right in front of him, it's like, it's unbelievable. I want to bring up something that ties into all of this because over the past year, I've become, I don't know if I would say friends, but certainly first name basis. Like, I like and know Vivek Ramaswamy really well, and I spent a lot of time with the guy. Like, this for me is the hardest point of distinction because, like, when it comes to the media space, I don't really care if you're controlled opposition, if you're pushing a narrative you don't believe in, because I trust in our audience. I'm not saying the corporate mainstream media audience. I trust in the audience that watches everybody on this panel right now to discern and decipher if we've sold out, and they will move on to greener pastures. I believe that. When it comes to politicians, especially now that I'm starting to know some of them, that makes it really fucking hard because you talk to Vivek off mic. He's the same dude that he is on camera. And I'm just like, I'm totally convinced this guy's like a true blue kind of moderate libertarian leaning guy. And like, as soon as he gets into power, he could be like, let's go fucking blow up, China. and I'm going to look like such an asshole because I've gone to bat for this guy.
Actors, are they better than Denzel Washington?
I don't know. This
Denzel
is
Washington is the greatest actor.
I know
Denzel's the greatest actor, but
yes. They are. John Edwards.
You watch The Art of the Surge. Has anybody seen that on Twitter? That Art of the Surge about Trump. They followed Trump around and were there during the assassination and all that shit. It's like, goddamn. I mean, I guess doing all this, if he's an actor, he's the fucking greatest actor. Everybody around him's the greatest actor. They're all the greatest fucking actors in the world. Denzel has lost his podium spot.
No, it's also what you're looking for. You're looking to believe it. Like that's a big thing about that kind of stuff.
Yeah,
you're being pushed into a position to have a emotional connection to the people on the screen like you would in any film or any TV production. And people buy into it hook, line, and sinker. People buy into it in the WWE, they buy into it in UFC, they buy into it in soap operas. Hell, dude, I thought that and because they were, Roseanne and Dan Connor were highly relatable to my parents, not in the least because my dad looked a lot like John Goodman. He really did.
But whatever force is pushing that, it's too complicated and too complex to be just human. I mean, I just can't see that being that's actually doing that.
I'm with you, dude.
Archon infection that coincided with the creation of the Abrahamic law religions in 1850 BC. This book that has been censored, not in his image, by John Lash. I interviewed Frank Jacob, and it goes back and it talks about the Nazis. It talks about this Jewish sect that was basically transhumanist, and the Sophia, where we come from. And again, we come from the stars, and they keep on dumbing us down, and now they're melting us with machines for this transhumanist age, which is, we're at the dawn of Aquarius. I can't wait till Pluto gets the fuck out of my sign of Capricorn that has been in Capricorn since 2008, and on November 19th at 3:39 Eastern. And the thing is this, when you find out that the early Christians and the early Jews psyop the stars and they killed the Magi, the astrologers, these people used to look at the stars, the planets, the positions, and then compare it with the events over centuries. And then slowly, they slaughtered the Magi, the Gnostics. And that's, we come from the stars, and the planetary energies have an impact, just like the moon has on our periods and the waves. So why these globalists, they use the cosmos, they use that. So they want to rob us of our divinity. And, to answer, I think what Alex was saying, we're going to experience a golden age. The agenda is 2030. They will lull us. You remember that experiment with the mice, that they're drowning them, and then they take them and they put them on land, and then they can keep on going. So just have to consider the overall eagle's eye plan of what is in store. Doesn't mean good things aren't going to happen. And the real answers are within. And I could say that because I've been covering the fucking dark inverted matrix, and it was swallowing my soul. And if it wasn't for this Kundalini rising, and it's all about raising your frequency. And
I want to bring Makia in real quick here, because Makia Freeman, who wrote a fantastic book on the satanic network behind these assholes. And it really sort of ties in this blending of the human and the non-human, and the human face of some evil. And what did you take away from this election, Makia? Because now we've got this guy coming back in, but I'm assuming you're gonna enlighten us on some darkness in everybody's past.
Right. Can you hear me, everyone?
Yeah, we can hear you fine. Thanks.
Okay, great.
I'm glad you could come on, even though I know you couldn't be on camera. I'm glad to have you just
Yeah. Thanks for having me on. Well, I just want to, before I answer that, I just want to quickly say, Miriam, I really like that book by John Lash. In fact, that's one of the books I've been reading in my research to write my next book, Not in His Image, because it's super important, actually, what we understand about that book. And in the first few chapters, John Lash goes through about how there was this extreme cult that basically hijacked Judaism, and they got the idea implanted in their mind that they were the chosen ones. And then they just ran with that, and it just infected everything. This mind virus.
Who
like
hijacked Judaism? Sorry to cut you off. I love this topic. Who'd you say hijacked Judaism?
This cult of the Zadokim is called, and John Lash goes through it. But basically, then this idea that we're special and we're the chosen ones goes then out and infects everything. Really, it gets into Christianity and Islam and everything. And I think it's actually the root of one of the biggest roots of all the problems we're facing today, because the Zionists control the world And what do they think? Well, they think that they're the best, and they think they have the right to steal the land from all the countries there, et cetera, et cetera. But anyway, as far as Trump goes, well, I think I was on either this Union of the Unwanted or some kind of group a few months ago, and it was right after, it was maybe like a month after Trump had faked his assassination, the first one. And I said, you know, it really looks to me like some group very high up have just parted the seas for Trump, because all of a sudden, all his problems have gone away. So now, you know, all these lawsuits that have been going on for a long time, draining his money, suddenly they're all dismissed. And now he's like Mr. Popular because everyone thinks he was, you know, almost assassinated when he wasn't. And you know, sure enough, then things were cleared for him, and now he's going to be in office. And so, yeah, I mean, there's different ways to look at it. You can look at it and say, well, he's better than the Democrats, and yeah, of course. I mean, some of the extreme people on the left who want to cut balls off young children and you know, like flood countries with 7 to 15 million people without documentation and allow them the, you know, right to vote and hold office and totally destroy the meaning of a citizen. Yeah, of course, pretty much anything's going to be better than that. But what I really have to again state, and been stating this for a long time, is that the answer to the problems, the answer to the New World Order is not going to be in politics. And so many people are still totally caught in this left-right paradigm. And it's been very interesting to see how they've hijacked whatever people woke up from the COVID scamdemic or have been waking up anyway and pulled them back down to this left-right thing, because the people that really run the world control both sides, and they don't really care what side you're on. They just want a polarized population. They want you on one side, they want you voting, they want you believing in this system, and then they've got you once they've gotten you to take sides. And you know, a lot of people now are gonna have voted. They see Trump will assume office, and they'll just go back to sleep and go, well, I did my part. I voted. I don't have to really think about this for another 4 years. And unfortunately, the New World Order agenda is going to roll on under Trump. It might, certain aspects of it will be maybe curtailed, like the immigration or other things, but other aspects will roll on as normal, whether it's digital IDs or I think war will roll on, because to me, it's really absurd and nonsensical for people to say, "Oh, Trump's like the peace president." Well, actually, he assassinated a very high-ranking Iranian general, Soleimani, which was, you know, like a massive insult and injury to Iran. Luckily, they didn't retaliate. He struck Syria, and he's coming out and saying he can solve the Ukraine-Russian war just like that. Well, I think that's kind of a lot of bravado. But let's just say he does meet with Putin, and they come up with a deal, and they stop the fighting there. Okay, great. But if you're doing that at the same time as backing Israel to the hilt and just speaking aggressive, threatening language towards Iran, well, then that's just going to give Israel all the excuse it needs. And let's face it, it doesn't need much to just keep killing and bombing and attacking all the countries around it, including Iran. And if things keep escalating between Israel and Iran and a war starts there, that's going to pull Russia and China in anyway. We all should know at this point, hopefully, that Russia, China, and Iran are in an alliance. So just because you stop the fighting along the Russian-Ukraine border, if you end up pulling Russia and China into a war with Iran on one side and the West on the other, that's going to be absolutely catastrophic. So, you know, there's just so many contradictions with Trump. You know, I mean, we've been through this. You know, we saw what happened in his first term, where he said all this stuff in the lead up to the election. You know, we're going to lock Hillary Clinton up, and then afterwards, oh well, actually, no, you know, she's a good person. We're not going to do that. Well, NATO's obsolete. Oh no, you actually, you know what? We need NATO, and on and on and on. I mean, it's not that hard to look up. You know, find out just what did Trump say before he was president. What did he do afterwards? It's very easy to kind of check this information, but yet people are again just totally lost in this left-right paradigm. And you know, I have to hand it to these people that run the world, these psychopaths, because they're very good at social engineering. They understand human psychology. People want a savior, and they're playing into that psychological desire for a savior, and they've done a very good job of co-opting people that actually want real freedom.
They're playing into that, Makia. You're absolutely correct. But what they're also kind of predicting behavior on is the various different investments that people have made into it. Some of them have, you know, it just baseline ideological investments into a false left-right paradigm. Right. They've just bought into that particular false binary. They think that's the only way the world works, and that's all they get. so they may as well go along with one team or the other team. There are people who are invested at a level where it generates them income. And so as long as they maintain their at least, on camera ideological relevancy to that particular team, doesn't matter what color jersey it is, then they can maintain the kind of status that they're used to. There are people that are invested in at a level where they're completely compromised, and that's when you get into office and become part of the public relations firm for an international oligarchy.
Let me devil's advocate this and see what you guys think, because from my vantage point, like, yes, I agree with most of what you guys have said about Donald Trump, and this is why I've been so critical of him. But the media used so much of its credibility, so much of its capital to basically make an 8-year push to try and convince the American people that he's this fascist tyrant dictator in waiting. And over 24 hours, basically.
You mean just as traditional media was dying and online media was taking over, and now a ton of the figures from traditional media are running online media? Gosh, that's shocking.
Well, I still think that it's devastating to the old guard regime media to have that narrative just shoved down their throat by Trump winning. If I'm controlling the world, I'm just put it bluntly, if I'm controlling the world, I do not want that to be the outcome. I want my propaganda to stick
building
and
the
win.
digital prison grid. I definitely want the inversion where it takes a Republican to do Democrat shit like Trump did, where he banned bump stocks and all the Republican governors went with the red flag laws, and the largest couple of upward transfers of wealth in recorded human history took place, which was way more fucking socialism than even FDR levied on the people in terms of transfer of wealth. So it's about the inversion. It took Democrats to pass NAFTA. It took Democrats to write the Patriot Act. It did take George W. Bush to pass it, but I think we can all agree that the incident that allowed for the passage of the Patriot Act was bipartisan in nature.
So your belief is that the destruction of whatever remaining credibility that the corporate media had left was a price worth paying to perpetuate this mission.
They're all invested.
It's
the
already
people
going
who
down.
invested in corporate media are already invested in new media to the hilt.
It's like energy and green energy. It's like Ukraine is basically already over anyway. I think, Steve, you were saying like the fluoride's already coming out of the water. It's like when you introduce vaccines when a disease has already been cured. Like that's the way they do it.
I just think it's a very steep price to pay. I mean, I'm not saying that you guys are wrong. I'm just saying like that is they still rely on it. I mean, look at what they've been doing over the past 72 hours as they do these kind of retrospectives, and they're trying to figure out, how did we lose? And it's like, well, yeah, because Trump went on all of the alternative media and that message resonated because it painted him as an authentic figure, whereas Kamala was this kind of crafted caricature of a political, demon that just didn't sell. And now you guys have lost. But in the meantime, they spent every hour of every day for 8 years straight propagandizing their audience into a narrative that did not stick. I mean, that is just so destructive to their reputation. It's hard for me to imagine that they'd be willing to go along.
I don't disagree with you. I don't disagree with you at all, Clint. I'm just asking you to take a step back or two steps back and look at it from the lens of we're socially engineering people into a specific spot. And I think you and I would both agree that, as far as, people in just any random community goes, they're more divided than they've been in a long time as more people are waking up alongside of it. Like there's a whole lot going on right now. So manufacturing confusion is the job of legacy media, driving people back into a two-party illusion that has never and will never represent them, because that two-party illusion is the forward-facing entity of an international oligarchy that even Jimmy Carter recognized a decade ago, 12 years ago, something like that.
So your operating thesis is that they were willing to sacrifice their remaining credibility because they are going to control the alternative media space, basically become
as a
that's going to be their new
libertarian,
vehicle.
Clint, can you point to me instances where the state was unwilling to sacrifice a massive percentage of the population, or at least a manageable percentage of the population, in order to achieve what they saw as a favorable outcome for the state?
They're more than willing to kill infinite people to grab onto 1% more power. That's not the point that I'm making, though. The point I'm making is, like, they are sacrificing their own foot soldiers. Like, they are sacrificing what they have dutifully built up through Operation Mockingbird and everything else to have this authoritative narrative, and that authoritative narrative is now under serious threat because of the people on this panel.
But we agree. We're saying the same thing. What I'm saying is that there is an additional step to that, and the additional step to that is the majority of the landscape is already state maintained. There are already very, very distinct parameters of allowable conversation that you can have anywhere. And so what that breeds is opportunism and self-censorship in order to succeed in the more allowable environments. And so what you get from that is, even unintentionally, and look, I'll even grant this, broadly across the board, unintentionally gate-kept atmospheres where you know what you can and can't say and exactly where your lines are, and you go ahead and dance with that devil because everyone has to eat.
Can I ask a question to everybody here?
Go ahead.
Alex Jones has announced that Wednesday will be the last day of InfoWars.
Again?
And it's all done. Okay, again, okay, you did say that before, but this seems to be it. Let's say this is it. What does that mean to everybody here? If the channel, the brand, and everything is dismantled, what does that mean to this very skeptical, paranoid panel here?
It means that they'll pop right back up with a new name and a new channel the next day. He's already done it 5 times.
The Alex Jones Network now, right?
Push to make some moolah.
AJN. I just seen Chris Wallace. He just quit CNN. So there's going to be a mass exodus out of legacy media into podcasting. I think we talked about that on AM Wake Up before, how they were about to shed most of CNN. And now after this, it looks like that's what's going to happen.
But he is losing something, though. I have been to his studio. It is very elaborate. It's very big. That's all being sold off. So it is. I mean, like, you guys.
Yeah, he's losing the physical of it. You know, the studio. I mean, the things that can be liquidated from him. But he's already started the Alex Jones Network, right? I mean, it's already growing, and it's just
they're also trying to seize his social media accounts too, which would be devastating for his reach. I don't think that this is a nothing burger. I think that it's actually a really big deal, not so much because of Alex Jones, but rather for the chilling effect that it'll have on anybody that tries to become the next Alex Jones. That, like, you will realize that you guys were talking about, basically how we self-censor. I think that everyone's going to self-censor to a certain extent, particularly when it comes to school shootings and things of that nature, just simply because of what was done to Alex Jones, $1 billion in fines, and seizing who he is.
To what degree would you also attribute that, Clint, to Donald Trump's policy, or at least his authorization of the kidnapping and then throwing it into a dungeon for 5 years of Julian Assange? Yeah.
I mean, that was a huge chilling effect on journalism more than podcasting. But yeah, it's terrible.
You know, also the ongoing press of censorship, and this comes, to a little bit different spot, but I think it touches upon just about everything that the vast majority of us on the panel tonight have noticed. Donald Trump has promised to set up a governmental task force at the taxpayers' expense to hunt down and get rid of anti-Semites.
Yeah, I saw
Which
that.
is, definitely something that a small government libertarian minded individual would do.
But that's a good question, though, because we do have opportunity here. Like Sam's asking, how does that affect us? Well, the narrative is shifting, right? There might be a different type of censorship or less censorship. And if Alex Jones does, go down, and he'll lose a percentage of his people, even if he starts up again or whatever. But there is a good opportunity for us to we've weathered the peak censorship, I think, the peak censorship time. And there is an opportunity with this whole narrative shift to maybe maybe grow a little bit, maybe get our own messages out there a little bit more. I do think that it's looking positive for us in the future.
Well, yeah, dude. Anybody who's not spouting out two-party nonsense gets a bump in the first year, 18 months after a selection, 100%. Because people go, "Oh wait, I got conned again." That's right. It really is all bullshit. Oh, that's right. My government does hate me. Oh, that's right. Every government does hate me. And so we pick up some people.
Seems
we
like
do.
it became one party.
I wanted to get people's
this
thoughts
last time.
because last it was either last episode or the episode before we had Adam Curry jump on, and Adam Curry, somebody who's been we're all big fans of, been watching and listening to for a long time, dissecting the media.
Not me. Controlled op, total controlled op. I don't trust Adam at all. I'm just kidding.
But that was kind of my my point is Adam's one of those people that he does believe Trump is the least of two evils. I mean, do you think, Steve,
so am I.
And so and probably so am I. And so do you think Adam Curry, somebody who's been dissecting the media to the extent that he has, is just not able to not be tricked this time around?
No, I think he's 100%. I don't think he's disingenuous when he says that.
Oh,
but
nobody
I
does.
think he's wrong.
Okay.
And what I think that both him and John don't look at, because their default position is Whitney Webb is a Fed, that they don't look at more of the technocratic state implications of what are actually being implemented over and over and over and over. So I think that because they've made a choice to deliberately ignore that part, that they have the position that they have. And I think they're completely convicted in their position. I just happen to disagree with it.
Yeah, but don't you think people are also ignoring the fact that, like, okay, so we just had somebody on who said that Trump, well, I want to quote him correctly, but that Trump faked his assassination attempt. Like, what evidence is that? Like that there's probably
we're gonna
more
get derailed
evidence.
big time on this one.
I don't think Trump faked the assassination attempt. I think the assassination attempt was very cleverly staged managed. But I've laid all that out on this show before, so I'm not going to rehash it. You guys can go back and watch a couple of episodes ago.
Yeah, but again, like, so there's my point is, like, on both sides, like, and this is something that the alternative media community also has to do. On both sides, we will sometimes highlight things that help get the conclusion we want, and then dismiss things or overlook things that don't. And I think there's, without a doubt, there's evidence of, or there's reasons to believe that Trump is just like every other election that's ever happened before him. But I also think that the people in the alternative media community at times also dismiss anything that could tell you otherwise, and or could be evidence of otherwise. So, like, to me, like, we have to look at all of it. Okay, I've on past episodes also have laid out things that made him slightly different than any candidate before him. And I could lay those things out, and you couldn't give me any other candidate that's ever happened to. You couldn't give me any other candidate that's openly ever questioned vaccines, that have ever been banned on every single social media platform, that has ever, been
faced 800 years in jail.
Well, I mean, up until just a dozen years
just
ago,
on
there
Trump
was no social media, so
over.
that's not necessarily an argument, Ricky.
So
I mean,
that's true, but since there's been social media, or since there's been the internet, like, he's been basically erased from the internet. So if there was no Twitter, there was no Facebook, there's other ways of erasing people from the internet, and not letting them post on their own website, not letting them, whatever other a tool there was, they were banned on. YouTube's been around for a while. There's been other presidents since YouTube's been around, so so you're at the end of the day, there is reasons to be absolutely skeptical, but I think there's reasons to be skeptical on both ends. And I just I don't like I've heard people who have constantly said, oh, he's just like every other candidate. He's just like every other candidate. And then when you lay out, okay, well, this is different, that's different. You're highlighting the one thing. Okay, maybe we'll take out the social media thing. Give me another candidate that hasn't been in politics his whole life, and
Trump first started running for president in 1992.
Okay, but he didn't make a career. He's not a career politician. You've said this before, but he's not a career. Has he spent his whole life?
No, he got way better media training before he re-entered into politics at the behest of a number of outside influences, which everyone can read in a 2014 or 2013 New Yorker article, where they were trying to groom him.
If your thesis is that politicians are actors, then the fact that he wasn't a politician doesn't really change anything, because
why do they all have representation from ad agencies and actor agencies? I mean, and look, dude, it's not here. I understand that people love Donald Trump. He's a lovable character. I think he's fucking hilarious, very frequently funny. He goes and does stand up at his rallies. That shit is hysterical. But we're all here because at one point or another we got our teeth kicked in on major platforms for going, hey, guess what? The government isn't the president. The government isn't the House of Representatives. The government isn't the Senate. The government is beyond that and beneath that and in the shadows of that. Every single one of us has been punished for saying that. But now, all of the sudden, because the guy who dropped more drones in 4 years than Obama did in 8, the guy who printed more money in 4 years than Obama did in 8, the guy who dropped the mother of all bombs in Syria, the guy who tried to overthrow Venezuela, the guy who organized coups in Myanmar, the guy who is promising a blank check to Israel, promising blowing Iran to smithereens. Smithereens.
Israel,
the
right?
guy who is promising boots on the ground of, if not your kids, maybe mine, and definitely a lot of other people's kids in China, for nothing. Because everyone knows you get involved in a land war in Asia. Everyone in Trump's cabinet is hot for a war in China. Everyone is. It's all, but in fact, the Biden administration has prepared for this because they shifted 25,000 troops into a different freaking field of training in order to prepare them for land war in China. This is something that it doesn't take tea leaves. All it takes is reading antiwar.com, and you can see this coming down the line.
I invited Kyle Anzalone from antiwar.com on today. He couldn't make it.
Big ups to Kyle and Dave and Connor and everybody else who
shout out to Scott
work
Horton.
out of there.
Yeah, Scott's got a new book coming out too.
Yeah, buy Scott's book. Do that.
Yeah, and for the record, and I got a pre-release of that. It's a masterpiece. Provoked. As soon as it comes out, everybody needs to read it. It's 1,000 pages.
I emailed Connor earlier today asking to get Scott on.
So, yeah, he's the best. Yeah. But look, I just want to make it very clear. I am not going in with rose-colored glasses on Donald Trump. Other than the boots on the ground in China, which I had never heard him say, but I'll take your word for it that perhaps he did. I'm aware of all of the pitfalls of Trump's first presidency. My name of my show is Liberty Lockdown. I am fucking furious with the guy for what transpired in 2020. So I did not cast a vote for the guy because I think that he's going to remedy everything. I view the presidency and him as basically like a warring factional gang that is slightly preferential to people like me in America than the existing paradigm, which had us on the precipice of World War III. Look, you're going to get a blank check to Israel no matter who's in power. I think that's pretty evident at this point. It's not like the Biden-Harris administration or the Antony Blinken-led State Department were really holding them back. You can ask the people in Palestine if they think that they've been held back at all over the past couple of years. I don't think that's accurate. I think that the people of Ukraine have suffered a terrible injustice because of Antony Blinken and the current State Department. I don't think that would have happened under Trump. I could be wrong. I don't really know. I just think that it's really important that the current regime, the current corporate media establishment, just suffers a refutation of the current trajectory of things, where they're just constantly lying and propagandizing us, and the American people said, we're not buying it anymore. I think that was a win for us. Now, whether or not this actually ends up with us being even marginally more free, I'm not sure. It's a total TBD. But we have a lot of leverage right now in my sphere of people that are like in the basically the orbit of Donald Trump and his cabinet, that I feel like we can get some things done on the margins that I know for a fact we would have had no fucking shot at if Kamala Harris was the president of the United States. So that was my rationale. I just want to make that clear.
Can we get Susie's opinion on this from a vaccine angle? Because we've got RFK sniffing around again, just like he was before, but Bill Gates chased him off back the first time around. Now he's coming back. There's questions about him. Yeah, obviously, I mean, his vaccine stance has been fantastic. His stance on Israel, I could do without. But that aside, what do you make of the Trump administration? I mean, this is Operation Warp Speed guy. This is the godfather of the COVID vaccines, who also said that he had questions about the vaccines before he was president. So what do you make of all this?
Yeah, Charlie, I have a really hard time with the whole warp speed thing. As you know, for those that don't, my son was injured by vaccines almost 17 years ago now, and is still dealing with health issues from that that are pretty severe. So for me, I'm like, fuck you, dude, because you are the reason that more children are going to be injured. However, he did promise, Bobby a chance to be a part of his cabinet back in 2016, and then rescinded once he got a couple $1 million from the pharmaceutical industry. So my faith in him is very little because of that. However, I do believe that when you get new information, critical thinking is important, or even critical. And I do see that he has done that. He has taken in new data points and he has pivoted. And now Bobby is leading a huge portion of this new cabinet. And we do have Maha. I was just a part of Rescue the Republic in Washington, D.C. It was Brett Weinstein of Dark Horse. It was Matt Toon that did Defeat the Mandates, LA and D.C. And it was Angela McArdle, who is the chair of the Libertarian Party. And we worked very closely together with the campaigns and with Tulsi Gabbard and with Brett Weinstein. And I already said him, with Russell Brand, who I know a lot of people don't like. With Jordan Peterson, the list goes on. But the point is that we're bringing the left, the right, and the middle together now. And that's what we have to do. You have to find your one issue or your two issues or your three issues that are most important to you, and work with the people that are willing to talk about those. And right now, I do feel like Bobby and Trump and Tulsi and Russell and even Elon, who also, I'm not a big fan of a lot of these people, but I do feel like they are giving us the best chance moving forward in what we're doing. And I'm not talking about people I've watched on podcasts. I'm talking about personal conversations that I'm having with them, and individually and together. And I'm seeing the fact that they're willing to put their pride and their ego aside to literally make America healthy again. So Charlie, I hate being called out, but I'm glad that you let me have my soapbox for a minute.
I wanted to. It's an interesting component to the Trump, whatever this is.
Can
going
I
to be
say something to that? Having covered
absolutely
since 2012, that for me, I saw all this coming. The positioning of Kirsch, even RFK. To handle this. I mean, it's overwhelming, the vaccine hesitancy. And, thank God for Brett Weinstein. I'm so happy. He's appropriated so many of our information. These people look to us, we get punished, and they source our information, and then they become the face of the truth. And fucking, look, you say people don't like Russell Brand. It's about being discerning, not throwing out the baby with the bathwater. Russell Brand, I got on Bill Maher to talk about my film when he knew shit about Big Pharma or GMOs or all of that. I would take some credit for educating him. And, it's great to have a 33 and become a Christian and now become the face of medical freedom. And he's brilliant. Russell Brand is brilliant. He's an orator. He channels, he's charming with his British accent. But it's still, if you know the way, like Steve says, the way the construct works, the nuances. So yeah, you have to be happy with what you get. It's an overwhelming, this is the most dangerous vaccine, non-vaccine in the history of man. And it's not like they're going to abate. So they have to present. So let's see what happens. Is there any ownership by Trump? How many patriots gave him a pass for Operation Warp Speed? I saw it happen. I saw these content influencers on the right pretend, feign upset. And then ultimately, of course, you're not going to take cackling demon whore Kamala Harris. That is what would be our future. Right? It's become so polarizing, fake and gay. And let's not forget Peanut that was also
Hey, I'm glad to see Richard Gage on here.
Richard Gage.
We're about to wrap this up. It's great. It's always great to see you, Richard.
You too.
Congratulations. I've been seeing you on some big shows recently. It's nice to know that I always feel like when I see a big show that has you on, I feel like, oh, that audience is about to get a dose of reality. They're about to have to get to the internet and start searching up some videos. What's been happening in your world since you and I got together last year in New York City at the Free World Conference to speak about 9/11? What's been happening? Have you been seeing a willingness recently for people to ask some more questions about that event?
Yeah, well, I don't know about that event, but 9/11. Tucker is dipping his toe in the water after so many years. Russell Brand is. We have Joe Rogan talking about Building 7. They don't get educated. They don't look at the evidence. They don't talk about the evidence. They don't have architects and engineers on. But it's just comforting to see that you can talk about it in polite society. No, you can't talk about it, but you can ask questions. And that's all they're doing. But in terms of what we're doing, we have a new film series called 9/11 Crime Scene to Courtroom, in which we're putting out the evidence in the form of a testimony to a special grand jury. And episode 1 premiered on September 9th. And that was us orienting the public to what it is we're going to be doing with the 24 experts. And Mick Harrison, the litigation director of the Lawyers Committee for 9/11 Inquiry, has put together a series of advices to the grand jury. And that's coming up in episode 2, where we introduce Building 7 and the evidence, and 4 of our experts start off. So it's something that we are planning to actually submit along with the other exhibits to the special grand jury via the U.S. attorney in the Southern District of Manhattan. So episode 2 is, I've finished my part, rough editing, And that goes to our Polish editor. And a couple of weeks, we'll have episode 2 rolling out. And then every couple of weeks, might take 3, we'll have a new series out. Maybe there'll be more than a dozen altogether when we get through.
Where can they see episode 1?
At the website for the event or the docuseries called 911 C2C. That's letter C, number 2, letter C.org. 911c2c.org or 9/11 crime scene to courtroom.org.
Richard, have you ever heard of Ray Hughes?
Ray Hughes, no.
Oh, she has Morgellons because of the smart dust in 9/11, and she's been, she won a lawsuit, and then she didn't win a lawsuit when they defrauded the court papers and gaslit her, and she's been healing, I don't know, since 9/11, and has oozing wounds and is very toxic. And some of the doctors that she's worked with are now dead. I think if you're doing a show, I don't know if you're still, ongoing, but Ray is, she was there, and she's been censored for the truth about the neural dust.
I didn't know about that. I didn't know about Morgellons as a result of 9/11 dust
The
exposure.
smart dust, yeah, there was,
Say the name again. Ray, R-A-Y Hughes.
No, Ray is R-A-E. She's an amazing human being. Hughes, H-U-G-H-E-S. I know she's a big fan of Sam Tripoli.
Who isn't, though? Really? Come on.
Right. That's fair. That's fair.
Should we get Nature Boy?
I can put you in touch, because if you're doing court cases, she has quite the story, and she needs, support.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Can I give you my email?
Yes, please. You put it in the chat.
Yeah, put it in the chat. Don't say it over the airwaves.
Thank you.
Yeah, don't
get an email from Gail. Yeah.
Gail's my wife.
Thank you.
So, but people are talking about 9/11 a little bit more. That seems like it's a good. Like you said, people are asking questions, right? I'll take it at this point. 20 plus years. What took you so long? But as long as it's happening now, first it always starts with questions, right? So I guess we should take that victory for what it is, and then, if you have more questions, or these questions aren't getting the answers that you like, maybe you want to talk to a guy who has over 3,000 architects and engineers behind him, showing you this isn't some lunatic huffing paint in his grandma's garage talking about 9/11. These are serious people who have an honest reputation that they want to uphold, and what they're seeing is not opinion, it's math and physics and architecture. And it's telling them that the official story is not true, and that if the official story is not true, we have a problem here. And I think that that's reasonable for people to ask questions. It's unreasonable for you to not have questions, frankly. So given that everything that we saw on our television. So I'm glad that, I want more, of course, but I'll settle for questions right now, because we know that'll lead to more questions, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. Right on, Charlie. And if anybody, any of you want to have me give the evidence on your podcast, I'm most happy to do that. We're trying to get out there more, ever more. So,
well, yes, of course.
I just want to get Nature Boy's he's been patiently listening to him and rant cast. If you guys want to share some thoughts on some of the things we've been discussing tonight, just kind of your own personal philosophies on some of the topics, please do before we wind down.
Well, I personally think that Trump, as I like to call him, Orange Jesus, is a false prophet and Judas goat. Pretty simple. I think that one is known by the company that they keep. And when I look at his history while he was president, in 2019, Pompeo and Kushner attended the Bilderberg Group. Anybody out there? I know Jason is very familiar with the Bilderberg Group. That's the belly of the beast when it comes to globalism. It is kind of where the pinnacles of power get their marching orders. Now, let's fast forward to 2024. Look around. Who is his vice president? J.D. Vance, full-fledged member, been to many groups. Peter Thiel. Not only is Thiel part of the Bilderberg group, he's part of the steering committee. In a sense, not only is that, well, I'll forgive my not use the expletive I was going to use, Mr. Thiel is not only in the belly of the beast, he's in the bowels of the beast. So to think that to think that Trump is going to drain the swamp to end globalism, to fight against the globalist plan to nationalize America because he's George Jesus, is a naive proposition. And that's just kind of my take. Now, time will tell. And I've been wrong many times before. But I just don't see it any different, man. I think that what we have been witnessing with this selection is an elaborate political theater. And everybody has been enamored by the actors on stage, the Kamalas, the Trumps, the Kamalas, the Trumps. But never once are they asking, who's the director of the play? The producer, the executive director, who's flipping the money to put this down and make this happen? So I wish I could say, yes, Trump is going to save us, but I just can't, guys. I just can't.
Well, the good news is that Pompeo got ditched yesterday.
Yep. I heard there was a website put up for people to go on and voice ideas and things like the Pompeo thing, where when it was heard, when there was rumors Pompeo was going to be joining him, then, you know, there was an uproar on Twitter, and supposedly there's this website put up to put these grievances on. And then Pompeo, he's going to have nothing to do with it. Nikki Haley now is out. But then they're saying that he's going to take it back to like 187 years ago when if you are not for his agenda, get the fuck out of here. You're out of the way, fired, get out. And they just announced that again, that whoever is not for Trump's agenda, be ready to resign or be fired. Like, that's okay. That's something.
It's going to be entertaining, if nothing else. I mean, this is, I don't know. I guess we'll take whatever sort of victories we can get out of this. I mean, I know that if the Biden-Harris administration stayed in there, there'd be a big push to turn children, you know, to manipulate.
I want to see the
children
legacy media dismantled.
That they're, you know, trans and that whole thing. And I don't like either of the, you know, I don't like any politicians except Ron Paul. But anyone who's going to make sure that they don't sterilize kids or confuse them or anything, that has to be some sort of victory, right? I mean, we have to sort of just at least, I mean, we're going to get a whole new set of problems with Trump. Don't get me wrong. It's technocracy, it's Thiel and Vance and all that. I mean, it's going to be awful, but there's not going to be the trans thing. That's good, right? That there's no appetite for that. The between COVID and what they did to Trump for the last 8+ years, the mainstream media has lost almost all their credibility, and it's pretty obvious. That's pretty good, right? So I'll take that. I understand what Steve is saying is they're migrating online, but still, just the embarrassment of the mainstream media finally crumbling, that they're trying to sell MSNBC, Comcast trying to sell it, and there's no takers. Nobody's interested in it. Oof. Okay, what are you going to do? Write it down? Great. I mean, the Joe Scarboroughs of the world are having to eat their foot, you know, this week and go, well, you know, we don't know what happened. It's like the world is seeing that the mainstream media has no clothes, and that is a victory for us. I think that if nothing else, it's going to shake loose a bunch of normies that are just like, what is going on? I just want to know what's actually happening in the world without some bizarre slant to it. Just tell me what's happening. I'll make up my mind, right? And so there's a lot of free agents out there that the alternative media, the actual alternative media, not the manufactured one that they're doing, but the people that are putting out shows and podcasts and writing books and things like that about that. It's going to be a huge opportunity for you to find a new audience that is interested in figuring out what's going on, and you're going to be there to write the bad news, I guess. I don't know. Does anyone else feel that way, that there's actually some optimism that there's going to be a lot of people looking for information out there that we could maybe reach?
I think that's one advantage of the Tucker Carlsons and those likes out there, the mammies, if you will, is that they're breaching subjects that traditionally are taboo. And it makes it easier for somebody like me to talk to a normie about this because they've already been introduced by somebody that they trust. And that gives me the opportunity to go in depth in these areas and maybe kind of point them in a different direction and say, hey, the way that it's presented here by Tucker, that's really not how it is. You might want to go over and look at this source or view it from this other standpoint. So, like with anything, there's always a silver lining in the darkest of clouds. And that's one of them, at least that I can see in the mammies.
So the Tuckers are like conspiracy lube?
Yeah, man. Yeah, they're the fluff for the conspiracy guys, if you know what I mean.
Get you going, and then we come in and take over and say, all right, this is what's really
the fluffer gets out of there. We do the scene. They say action. Yeah.
I lived in LA. I know what's up.
I know you do. That's why I said, oh, by the way, that I heard something. Was it you, Charlie, talking about the strip joint right out of LAX?
Yeah.
That Bear just Elegance. Got Bear Elegance. I remember that one because I used to come in.
I remember when the owner got murdered in the ambush. Yeah, it was crazy. Yeah. That was what we were talking about yesterday.
Yeah, when you said that, would describe where it was, I was like, oh, dude, I drove by that a million times. Just drove by, never stopped.
Yeah. All right. We've got to land this burning airplane that we're on, and I'm so glad that you guys have taken 2 hours out of your night to spend it with us, and we really do appreciate it. I want to make sure that everybody gets a chance to explain who they are, what they're doing, why they're on this crazy show. Let's start with you, Dave, since we were just talking to you. Let everybody know where they can find Third Rail.
First of all, I really want to let everyone know I enjoy sitting around the smartest people in the room. It's really a nice conversation. That's why I was so quiet. I was just enamored of hearing everything you had to say. But to give my pitch, I have a podcast called The Third Rail, broadcast live every Friday at 5 p.m. Pacific, 8 p.m. Eastern on Rumble. It can be found on the AM Wake Up channel, My Third Rail channel, the TNP New Prisoners channel. The audio podcast is wherever audio podcasts are served and can also be heard on the Ocelli network on Ocelli.com and freeworld.fm.
Awesome. Thanks for coming out. Monica, what's going on with Monica Perez Show? How are you?
Thank you so much. Yes, you can find my stuff on the MonicaPerezShow.com. And actually, the favorite thing that I'm doing right now has nothing to do with current events, probably for a good reason. We've been reading and discussing these Jim Keith books, who was like an OG of conspiracy research, died in 1999. So he didn't actually see it all go up in flames, but he predicted a lot of it. So I'm reading that, Mass Control, Engineering Human Consciousness. And you can find, I like to chat with y'all on at Monica Perez Show. Oh, and I just started a Substack, also at Monica Perez Show. So I love that. It's like Twitter, only free. So not free in money, but like, you can actually talk to each other. I get more interaction there than on Twitter where,
Oh, whatever. Please. I'm crossing my fingers that Substack isn't totally compromised.
You just got to keep riding the waves. It's getting us all on there, but you just gotta keep going.
Yeah. Chris Best is out of SFO, San Francisco. Very interesting. The CEO.
Miriam, what's cooking? When is your
book coming out? Yeah,
coming out.
It's on. It's supposed to come out Christmas. Through Moonrock Books. Operation George Floyd, a multi-layered psyop exposed. And it's going to be historic. And I've only been waiting a year in delays. So people can check me out on miriamhinane.substack.com. And I would invite you to check out Truth Lives Here on Rockfin and Rumble. That episode that I did with Frank Jacob about the Archon infection is fascinating. And last thing, buzz on over to honeycolony.com if you wonder how I reversed lupus and managed to be healthy at 51, yeah, you can check out honeycolony.com.
I was just talking about Honey Colony this afternoon because we got a new cat named Honey. So.
Oh, really?
Yep. We inherited my mom's
Well,
cat.
I'm also looking for a partner because I'm on the precipice. So I really need a partner that's
I'll ask the cat.
Run the operations so I can do my magic.
Cool. Susie, what's cooking at the Inspired Network?
I am always doing the behind the scenes stuff, Charlie. You know me. So we did the Geneva Project in Geneva, Switzerland this year with the World Health Assembly. Did Rescue the Republic in DC, like I said, with Brett and those guys. And I am working on another project right now that is NDA worthy. Always happy to support people though. So anyone on this call that needs some background assistance, I'm here. I'm not really a good promoter of myself. I do a vaccine injury support through Initiatives for Family Health for anyone that has injured kids or adults. Now with COVID-19, we're seeing a lot of that. So I'm happy to support anyone any way that I can to get back on a track of health. You do not have to buy hundreds of dollars in supplements every month to be healthy. Foundations of health, clean air, clean food, clean water, meditation, community. Get out there and ground, exercise. It's really, really important that you get your foundations on track before you start doing anything else. Because if you don't have your foundations, everything else is going to crumble. So reach out. I put my contact info in there and I am happy to help and support any of you.
And we are happy to promote solutions. We love that. So, Chris, what's cooking? What are you doing?
Nothing really.
No.
I got really nothing going on recently. Feels pretty good. I'm just pop into AM Wake Up every once in a while. Yep. You can still find me at rain.raincast.com, but I'm kind of on a hiatus.
Well,
it feels kind of good.
Back. Well, that's all right. Take some time. Richard Gage, my friend. It's always great to see you virtually or in person. We have met up all over the place. Washington, New York, Acapulco.
Yeah.
What are you going to be presenting in the future? What else can we promote besides 9/11 crime scene to courtroom, 911c2c.org?
Don't have any physical presentations scheduled coming up. It's mostly getting those dozen episodes done so we can get back on our podcast, Gail and I, which is Richard Gage 9/11 Unleashed. Yeah. And we've got a lot of people we want to interview, including many of you.
Fantastic. I want to mention some people who were here and had to drop off. Graham Dunlop from Grimerica. Go to grimerica.ca. Go to adultbrain.ca. They did the audiobook for The Octopus of Global Control. And Darren did the audiobook for Hypocrisy, which isn't out yet, but I'll let you know when it's out. So I love to support those guys. And if you're interested, and if you want to get audiobooks from really like obscure books that are kind of out of copyright or some book that you've heard of that you don't really want to sit through and read, go to adultbrain.ca and see if they've recorded an audiobook for it, because they've got a ton of them. And it's a fantastic place for people to go get those books that maybe they've heard of, but never actually read. Monica read them, but nobody else really actually read them. Jason Burmis was here. Go check out his work. If he really does get Rudy Giuliani to admit that Building 7 was a controlled demolition, I will eat my mouse pad.
I'll join you.
But I appreciate
he already knows.
I appreciate the effort nonetheless. Clint Russell from Liberty Lockdown, it was here. Go check out his show. And also he's part of Tower Gang. Those retards do shows that are offensive and fantastic all at the same time. Makia Freeman from the Freedom Articles was on. I invited him. I was able to just get it. He said he could only be here by audio, which is fine. So anyone that's interested, go check out his outstanding work. TheFreedomArticles.com is where he posts all kinds of fantastic news, not just his, but other people's as well. Steve Poikinen from AM Wake Up was here. You might have noticed. He one of these days we'll get him to come out of his shell. And also Alex Securis from Skeptico was here. He wrote a book about AI as well. So if you go listen to Skeptico, they always talk about real heavy brainiac type stuff. I mean, he's an interesting guy. We love Alex. So Sam Tripoli from he's got a new special out. It's got 250,000 views already on Rumble and X. So go check out Sam Tripoli's new special. You can go to samtripoli.com and find out. I just bought a new shirt from him. The tinfoil hat, but the Dodgers logo with the baseball is a UFO. It's so amazing. I am excited. It's going to be delivered soon, so I haven't gotten it yet. But when I do, I will wear it just to show support for my man, Sam Tripoli. And Midnight Mike from OBDM, the funniest podcast in the world, Our Big Dumb Mouth. You can go to ourbigdumbmouth.com. And when you listen to the intro, you will hear Nature Boy, who did the voiceover on that one. It's kind of unforgettable. Ricky, what do you have going on? What's going on with the Ripple Effect? Who's on recently?
I got Andrew Collins. He's from the UK. He's very much like a Graham Hancock. We talk about ancient civilizations, Anunnaki, and the origins of man. And then I got some. So that's recorded already. Hopefully, it will be out in the next day or two. So look out for that. And then I got some great guests coming up. Jay Dyer's coming up. And then also a somewhat controversial guest, which of course are always my favorite. He's the author of the Assault on Truth, and Candace Owens talks about the book quite a bit, and many others. But he's a very fascinating guy who gets into some very controversial topics. So I'm really excited about exposing his work to some people who might not be familiar with his book. And then I got some other people, but I try to not to look too far ahead because I'm like, who's the next guest? Let me dive deep in some of the topics we're going to discuss and whatnot. So, but you can find all that at the rippleeffectpodcast.com. I'm everywhere besides YouTube. And that's it, I think, for that.
Macroaggressions. I've got Dr. Andrew Wakefield on this week. We talk about his film Protocol 7 and and his previous film Vaxxed. I saw Vaxxed in the theater in Denver, and was excited to tell him that I was a supporter of his work in every way. And
did you see the original, Charlie?
Yeah, I saw it in the theater.
I was on the Vax bus, the original Vax bus.
Wasn't Robert De Niro involved with that?
We talked about Robert De Niro in that
So
too.
he wasn't.
Well, he was and he wasn't. Yeah, we talked about that in the interview. So go check it out. Macroaggressions.io is the place for that. The Octopus of Global Control is now an audiobook. It's 23 hours of Graham Dunlop with that sweet Canadian accent that you heard earlier tonight in your ear hole, giving you the bad information, bad news. I'm sorry. I hate to, but at least he's going to be nice enough to break it to you. So it'll be gentle. Otherwise, that's about it.
Did we plug Monica? I'm sorry. We have so many people on. We did. Okay. I'm just making sure we didn't forget any.
I love you guys. I'm very grateful for you guys in my life, really.
Well, we appreciate everybody that contributes to this show, and we hope that you'll take this episode and spread it everywhere you can. Not in a dirty kind of way, but share it with those that you like.
And we've talked internally. We've talked about doing a live show somewhere at some point. I know Mel K's, a big fan of that idea. I've talked about it with Charlie.
Ricky and I are in charge of the tech stuff now, and it's not great. I'm just saying.
But we definitely want to eventually, maybe do that. People listening, people watching, if this is something that you guys would show up to, that you would be excited about, let us know. Definitely, write something in the comments, write us on social media. Let us know if we get a lot of positive feedback.
Live, like a live in-person show.
I believe people will show up.
Yes.
We'd have to do it.
We talked about this in the chat, and the hosts have talked about it.
In Florida.
Vegas,
in Florida.
Vegas, baby.
I've heard
you bring back Conspiracon, but I'll go for a live viewing of the Unwanted in Vegas.
And Ricky and Charlie, I can help you with the tech stuff. So call me.
Thank you so much.
Where would you do it, Ricky?
I'm Vegas and Florida would be great locations. I mean, somewhere warm. I hate the cold. Yeah. Like, give me the
we'll let you know if we ever put something like that together.
Yeah.
It sounds like fun.
It would be a blast to get a bunch of people together. I think the listeners would love it. I think the show with the guests have become a community, but I think the listeners has also feel like a community of people. And yeah, so give us some feedback. Let us know. Also, give us some feedback on who you might want on the show on future episodes. Like, I know sometimes I get suggestions like, hey, hit up this person, hit up that person. So if you have any friends or shows you listen to that you think would be a great addition to the Unwanted and on the panel, let us know. We're always open to having people from all different backgrounds and points of view, and I don't think we stray away from that at all. So, and I think that's what makes it fun. We're all on the same team, even if we disagree on some specific details. I think what Susie said earlier was so important. This idea of find a topic or two that where you can kind of humanize each other and meet somewhere and kind of go from there. So super important. But thank you everybody. Any last words, Charlie? Sorry, I cut you off.
That's it. We appreciate y'all. Take care.
We'll see you guys in a couple weeks.
Bye, everyone.
See you guys soon.
Thank you.
Happy 11/11 portal.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks.
Bye.